I 4 or 5 years ago, I woke up one morning and said, "My God, I've been here almost 20 years. Where did time go?" When I went to college, my dad told me I could do anything I wanted to do. He'd pay for my college, but he wouldn't pay for me to become a teacher. But I never wanted to become a teacher. I never, no way, and no way. And there was no way I was going to go and have a military career either. Well, I wound up, after college, trying to stay out of Vietnam, so I went to graduate school for a while, but it was half-hearted. And my grades weren't very good in college, but in those days they took anybody into graduate school to keep them out of Vietnam. Was able to get my master's degree, and I got it in political science because they didn't have a journalism program there. And, poli-sci department had evening classes. And my master's degree when I was here was in poli-sci because I like poli-sci. So I went off and stayed in the Army because at the time I was due to get out. The economy was bad, and the Army was a good job, and hey, I got paid well, and I just stayed in. The Army had a slot at the Air Force Academy for a professor in political science. I never taught before. I go in there, and I'm dealing with the Air Force. I never dealt with the Air Force before. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know they had an Air Force Academy. I remember when I got the assignment, I went down to my boss, and who I knew was a West Point graduate, and I said, "Hey, I just got a call from assignments, and they wanted to know if they want me to go teach." He said, "Well, where?" And I said, "Someplace called the Air Force Academy." And he just went ballistic. And I said, "Do you know what it is?" And he said, "Yeah, it's the Air Force's West Point. Yes, you take it." I said, "Well, I don't know, But I went off and took the job, and I show up, and I said, "All right, how do we teach?" And they said, "What do you mean, how do you teach?" I said, "I've never been a teacher before. I've never taught." And because they walked in and said, "Here's a pile of books. Classes start week after next. How do I teach?" Well, there were 2 or 3 of us who were in basically the same boat in terms of the other guys were Air Force officers. This was all in the poli-sci department. So they brought in a couple of former teachers or people who were good professors there. And they gave us a little talk on how to become a teacher. Lesson plans and syllabus and all this stuff. And one of them was really good. I remember he had won several awards for his teaching ability, and he taught philosophy. And he said, "Think back and think who your best teachers were and just do what they did. Relate to the class. And remember, in a 60-minute class, students will only retain 3 things at the most. So pick out what 3 things you want them to know and repeat them." Well, about halfway through this, I realized, and I had about 10 years in the Army then, and retirement was 20 years. I said, one of these days I've got to retire. What am I going to do when I retire? Because I'm going to be in my early 40s or mid-40s. I'll become a professor. Initially I was in higher education administration or some damn thing. And I had a communication course. And I said, that's what I really need to be in. So I went over and talked to those people. We arranged it. The Air Force Academy people were really great. Got a call from WVU, a friend of mine here in Morgantown. They said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting ready to go become the head of ROTC at the University of Wyoming." And I like Western history, especially the Indian Wars. So I had planned out all this stuff that I was going to do. And he said, "Why don't you come back to West Virginia?" So I applied and was accepted back here. Figured I'd only spend about 5 years and then go out in the public relations real world. Well, I've been here 24 years. So that's how I got into the business, and I'm sure my dad has rolled over in the grave a couple of times because I'm a professor. But as a professor, you don't realize, my God, it's been 20 years. I mean, I remember, I've had, 2 or 3 times where I've taught kids whose parents I taught, okay? I said, my God, where did time go? Well, every semester you got new students. So that's a new experience. It may not be a new experience from the knowledge point of view, but it's a new experience with that group of people and how you adjust to them. Everything in there I try to put a practical spin on it because there's so much out there. And a lot of it's just common sense. But if I can make it interesting and make it relevant to real world experience, then maybe it'll stick. I'm glad I've retired. And it's kind of scary because I've always had a job since I was like 16. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I can only do so much fishing. I get tired of that. I can do so much hunting. The summer and fall, I can stay busy. Spring semesters, January through about the end of March and April, are going to be very difficult for me because I think I have enough to do outside the rest of the year. But that spring is going to be tough because you can't plant anything outside. And I love to garden and I like flowers. I like to hunt and fish, travel. So it's going to be, I just got to find something.